All right, so good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from, everyone. And welcome to all families, students, people, teachers from around Canada and around the world joining us as we do this special presentation for Science Literacy Week. So my name is Jesse Hildebrand. I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. And for those who might be joining us for the first time, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms, into homes around the world through cool digital broadcasts. A typical month will see us do 40 to 50 amazing presentations with scientists and speakers from all around the world. And you can check us out on exploringbytheseat.com or on our YouTube channel with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. So Science Literacy Week, what's that all about? So Science Literacy Week showcases the excellence and diversity of science across Canada. Today, we are in the midst of the week from Monday through Sunday, the 21st through 27th of 2020. We are joined by libraries, nonprofits, schools, groups all around the country, coast to coast to coast, in highlighting just amazing stories of science in action. So this year, the theme is particularly special and particularly close to my own heart. It is biodiversity. So Canada, as many of you may know, is a country really rich in biodiversity, from marshlands to tundra, boreal forest to temperate rainforest, so many amazing habitats and so many amazing creatures. We are so excited to highlight the amazing wildlife and diversity and ecosystems that comprise our amazing country. So joining us today to explore this biodiversity is a biodiversity expert. So I'm pleased to bring in Dr. Julia Baum and give her a quick chance to say hello. So thanks so much for joining us, Dr. Baum.
Morning.
Morning. And before we get underway with her and diving in with our questions, I want to introduce Professor Alejandro Adam. He is the president of the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada for a special message.
Hello, my name is Alejandro Adam, and I am president of the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada, inviting you to take part in Science Literacy Week. As a scientist myself, I know firsthand the tremendous joy of discovery and learning about science. La Semaine de la Culture Scientifique met en valeur le travail des rédacteurs, d'artistes, des cinéastes et des communicateurs qui nous parlent des incroyables découvertes faites par des scientifiques et des ingénieurs canadiens. This September, libraries, museums, science centers, schools, and not-for-profits across Canada are celebrating this year's Science Literacy Week theme, Biodiversity. Ces promoteurs de la culture mettent en vitrine des livres, des films, des balados et des activités qui explorent les faits scientifiques sur l'incroyable variété de plantes, d'animaux, d'organismes et d'écosystèmes qui constituent la vie sur la Terre. They are also sharing stories, interviews, and documentaries about all kinds of other great scientific discoveries having to do with medicine, outer space, computers, and more. Il est facile de participer à la Semaine de la Culture Scientifique. Visit our website at www.scienceliteracy.ca to learn more about what's happening during the week. Découvrez l'estime par la lecture au cours de la Journée nationale Je lis la science, le 23 septembre. Visit your local library. Stream a nature documentary at home. Or listen to a podcast interview with a scientist working at the cutting edge of their field. Science Literacy Week is about helping us all appreciate the stories about the science, discoveries, and ingenuity shaping our lives. Science Literacy Week runs from September 21st to 27th, 2020. Soyez des nôtres.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Professor Adam, for such an awesome message highlighting the importance of science to people all across Canada. So many great resources, and we will be bringing up banners throughout the presentation to help remind you of how you can take part in the week. Especially important to go to local libraries. I love that. So without further ado, let's bring in Dr. Baum again. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Baum. And we are introducing you as a professor of marine biology in the beautiful west coast of Canada at the University of Victoria in British Columbia. So really appreciate you taking the time today. This is great.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to do this.
Awesome. Well, let's kick it off with a question. You're a biologist. You spent your career studying fish, corals, the ocean. Why? What drove you to be so interested in biodiversity that you made it your career?
Well, initially, I When I was probably a similar age to a lot of the students who are watching today, I learned about the extinction crisis. And so I learned about the idea that some animals were being driven to extinction, mostly by the things that people were doing to them. And it just broke my heart to think that people were driving species to extinction. And I basically decided to make it my life's work to help stop that. But beyond that, and that drive to want to do that, I was really captured by the beauty of the world around us, the natural world around us. And I want to show you some of that beauty. So I hope you can see that, Jesse and children. So I've been really inspired by the natural world around me, and in particular the ocean, and I'm just captivated by the amazing creatures that are all around us in Canada and in oceans around the world. I'll leave you with this one to take a look at, which is reef sharks in the middle of the Pacific Ocean on a tiny, tiny island where there are some of the most abundant and healthy reef shark populations remaining in the world.
Is stunning. Dr. Baum, beautiful. Thank you so much. So the next question, I guess, is, that that sort of beauty would inspire pretty much anyone to end up in a career like yours. But what does your day by day look like? What is your work about?
Yeah, great question. Well, it's a funny time to be asking people what their days look like right now during this pandemic, right? And I think it's funny for everyone. I see a lot of school kids are actually back in the classroom, but the classroom feels a bit funny and not normal. And some kids are doing school from home. So I understand things are pretty different right now. And for me, my job is a bit different right now too, because I've been working from my little office at home for the past 6 months. But normally what my job is really about is doing science, which means solving problems. And so I like to think of scientists as problem solvers. Scientists are really curious by nature. We want to understand why the world is the way it is. And we want to understand things that nobody knows the answer to and make new discoveries. And that I find always really, really thrilling. When you ask a question, you figure out how all of the pieces of the puzzle come together, and you discover something, you find out something that no one on the planet has ever known before. You're the first to know this new piece of information. And that to me is really cool, especially when it's something about a beautiful ecosystem like the coral reef that you see in front of you. So that's a really big part of my job, but the way that I really do that job is with a large group of students. And so what I'm doing as a professor is really training the next generation of students. So I'm training young people a little bit older than yourselves to become scientists.
Fantastic. What a cool message. So speaking of coral reefs, we have this beautiful shot up in front of us. They're the most diverse marine ecosystems. We can see all this amazing life there. Why is that? What's so interesting about them? What's so important about coral reefs?
Yeah, great question. So coral reefs are the most diverse ecosystems in the ocean. So on land, we often think about tropical rainforests, and coral reefs are the tropical rainforests of the ocean. So there are tens of thousands of different species that live in our oceans, many different types of fishes, lots of different invertebrates, and a quarter of all of those species live on coral reefs. So right there, that to me is a huge draw, because these ecosystems are just like mind-blowingly gorgeous. mind-blowingly important in terms of all of the life that they sustain on planet Earth. And then also really important because many people, maybe not in Ontario, which is actually where I grew up, or maybe not in Vermont, but many people in the tropics live right on or beside coral reefs. And so they're relying on coral reefs to provide them often with their food. Often people are fishing on the reef or for their jobs. And so coral reefs are really, really important both for animals and for people.
So this is a nice segue into the next question, which is about human activities in the ocean. In your opinion, is there a biggest impact that humans are having on marine biodiversity? Something that we're doing that's the worst or biggest impact thing?
Yeah, you want the biggest of the baddies. Well, there's lots of different things that people are doing that impact the oceans. And maybe students have heard of things like plastic pollution or overfishing. But the biggest problem, in my opinion, is climate change. And climate change is impacting every part of our planet, both on land and in the ocean.
So I'm sure we'll have plenty of time to cover more of that later with some of the classroom questions, which is great. We don't want to leave it off just on that, but that's fantastic.
Sure.
So on the flip side of this, so we're doing all these things that are impacting marine ecosystems, especially coral reefs. What are some things that we can do at home to help mitigate that impact? What are some things that we can do to make the world a better place, whether we are in Vermont or Ontario or classrooms across Canada and the States?
Yeah, well, again, if you're in Ontario or Vermont, it might seem like, well, how am I going to save the ocean? I'm so far away from it in the first place. But I think there are actually a lot of things that we can do, and that's because everything is really, really interconnected. And because climate change is the biggest problem, there are a lot of things that we can do at home to help address that. So as an adult, one of the most important things that adults can do is vote. Now, kids don't get to vote, and that means figuring out who's going to be in government and be in charge and making the decisions. But if you are a school kid in America, for example, there is a big election coming up. And so you can talk to your parents about climate change and trying to ensure that we're voting for governments who are going to address climate change, because it's a really big threat to everyone on the planet. But just in our day-to-day lives as people, we can also do a lot of other things to help address climate change. And so a couple of things that we can do are think about having lower impacts. So we can choose to walk places or bike places instead of getting in a car and driving places. We can try to eat a diet that has lower impacts on the planet. And so that means maybe reducing the amount of meat that we're consuming and trying to consume more vegetables and grains and a more vegetarian-based diet that has a lower impact on the planet. So there are a lot of things that we can do every day, and every action that we make, for example, when we go out shopping, bringing our own shopping bags, recycling, there's tons of things that we do every day, and we have choices to make about making the most healthy decision for all of the different actions that we do in the course of a day.
Yeah, outstanding. One of the things that we cover a lot in this broadcast is this topic of how kids can get involved. And one of the sort of central tenets boils down to is don't waste, whether that's emissions, whether that's food, whether that's plastic or materials. If you don't waste and you take that mindset to a lot of things you do in your life, you can make a big impact in a lot of ways. So I'm really glad we got that message in. Before we do one sort of last question from me to wrap us up and dive in with questions, I just want to note, if you're joining us on YouTube or Facebook, don't be shy. You can share questions there. Just let me know where you're joining from in the chat bar. I'd love to see your queries, and we'll pass them on to Dr. Baum when we're done. So your passion started with this love of biodiversity. And we have a lot of kids today that obviously are keen on biodiversity too. They're keen on the wildlife near them. What advice would you give to them to sort of stoke that passion, to light that fire, and keep them as fascinated as you are with the natural world?
Yeah, so get out and see biodiversity. So right now it's difficult to travel. People are probably not going to be traveling to a coral reef, but there are still lots of ways to enjoy biodiversity. So if you're really interested in coral reefs or the reef sharks that I was showing you, there are so many documentaries that you can watch. I'm a huge fan of the BBC series Planet Blue. But there's also biodiversity everywhere around us. So if you're able to get outside, despite COVID, go outside for a walk in your neighborhood. there is an app called iNaturalist where you can take photos of any creature that you see around you, whether it's a plant or an animal. You can upload it on iNaturalist and it will help you identify it, and also contribute to biodiversity data, because you will save that record and others will be able to share in it. So that's a way to connect with other people who are really interested in biodiversity. But essentially, biodiversity is all around us. It's not something special that is only found on coral reefs. Southern Ontario is actually one of the biodiversity hotspots of Canada. So there's a lot of nature right around you in your backyards and in the parks around you.
Yeah, that's like, you couldn't have set me up with a better segue if you tried. And so one of our campaigns that we're doing all September long at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants is Backyard Bio. So exactly, you couldn't have said it better if you tried. Created it. So the idea is you can get out in nature, share the pictures of wildlife near you with hashtag Backyard Bio. We have an iNaturalist project with over 7,500 observations already. In advance of this talk, I went out this morning and got 30 pictures of species near me in 10 minutes in a local park. So you guys can do that too. We'd love to see your shots, and you can connect with other classrooms around the world as well. So encourage you guys to check out Backyard Bio, and we'll share more of that in the resource pack at the end too. Dr. Baum, this is great. Thank you so much. And what I'd love to do now is dive in with questions from our classes. So first, we've got Miss Saunders, grade 6s, joining us in North Bay, Ontario. I want to bring them into the broadcast. Hey, guys, and if you have a question for us, come on up. So nice to see kids in the classroom, by the way. Thank you guys so much for joining. It's awesome. Off the screen, no.
Ask her.
Hi.
Ask her about my question. Ask her about her education. What's your education? Teacher told me.
So what's your background, Dr. Baum? Where did you get your degrees from? What sort of schooling did you need to end up in a position like yours?
Great question. Well, I think there's lots of different ways that people can contribute, and so everyone doesn't need to become a professor, but so I grew up and went to school in Guelph, Ontario, for my public school and high school, and then I went to university at McGill in Montreal and Dalhousie University on the East Coast in Halifax. So I spent a long time in school, but I think there's lots of ways that people can contribute to working on biodiversity issues with any level of education.
Yeah, fantastic. I want to follow up on this actually really quickly. So you mentioned a whole bunch of universities that are coast to coast to coast across Canada. And so did you find, did you do that intentionally? Was there an intent to sort of experience different things and work with different people that are around the country? Did that benefit you? Why so many different places?
Yeah, well, I went to McGill initially because I wasn't interested in the ocean yet. I didn't know how cool oceans were, and I really loved forests and wanted to study animals in forests and help conserve them. And it was when I was at McGill that I had a really inspiring professor who just turned me on to the ocean, showed me how cool oceans are, also showed me how threatened a lot of species and ecosystems in the ocean are, and really changed my whole worldview and made me want to study oceans. So that is why I went to the East Coast to Dalhousie afterwards to study ocean science with a professor there.
Yeah, awesome. By the way, Guelph you mentioned, and pretty much I swear half the people in animals or in education roles across Canada came from Guelph. So it's nice to highlight an amazing university in Southern Ontario.
Yeah,
let's go to our grade 11-12 class in Vermont. I know we've got 2 teachers from that class. So if you guys want to join us, and I'll bring you into the broadcast, and you can demute your mics. And if you have any questions for us from your students, go for it.
Hi, thanks for taking our questions. Our class is actually away and doing remote learning right now. So one of the questions that a student sent in was, what is the coolest animal you've seen in the ocean?
Well, you saw some of the pictures at the beginning. So if you remember the pictures that I was showing you, those are actually all pictures that me and my students have taken where we work in the Central Pacific. So we work on Christmas Island, which is an island, well, you guys are American, so you know Hawaii. So if you were in Honolulu, Hawaii, and you went due south and stopped just a little bit above the equator. That's where Christmas Island is, where we work. We go scuba diving there when we're there. We are doing all of our science via Scuba. So we're underwater for a lot of the day, every day, doing dive after dive after dive. And those photos that I showed you at the beginning of reef sharks, octopus, manta rays, those are all photos that we've taken. And so those are all things that that we've seen there. I really, really love octopus. They are super amazing to see underwater. They're so smart. They're so good at camouflage. One of my favorite things that I have seen, or we see quite often on Christmas Island, is pairs of octopus. And you can see them interacting, and then they'll kind of notice you, and they'll start camouflaging and changing shape and changing color. And I have to say, they're pretty distracting. It's very hard to do the scientific task that you're meant to be doing when octopus are around you. Probably the most spectacular thing that I've seen while diving is a huge school of dolphins that came swimming right over me. I was down very near the bottom, taking a sample from a coral, and all of these dolphins just swam right over my head, and that was pretty spectacular.
I would say so. Lucky you. You mentioned scuba diving, and every time we bring in people that scuba dive, they talk about how magical and amazing it is. I don't know if you know this offhand, but I always like to harp on it when we get a chance. Do you know when students can get their scuba diving certification so that we can inspire some of our kids to maybe get out for themselves?
You know, I should know this because I have a 10-year-old son, and I keep wanting to go scuba diving with him, and he's like a little bit scared. So I'm waiting for it. I believe at 12 years old, you can at least do like a beginner's course.
I've heard different things from different places. I'm pretty sure it's 10. In some places at 8, you can do bubble makers, which is literally just going
right,
your head. Yeah. But 10, I think you can start on the path to scuba diving, which our students, every one of our students that's live meets that criteria. And for our group in North Bay, you guys might know this, but right nearby is Tobermory, one of the elite diving sites in the entire world. So wherever you're joining from, even if it's a pool or a lake or a quarry, get out diving. It will absolutely change your life, and hopefully you can end up in a situation like Dr. Baum and have dolphins swimming over.
It really is a mind-blowing experience. It's hard to even describe how mind-blowing it is. Not even just because of all the amazing biodiversity that you see around you, but just because of the feeling of weightlessness and floating. And it's really, really cool.
It's like black magic. You can breathe underwater. I just got my certification last year, and I've been like just chomping at the bit to go diving ever since then. So I'm so glad we could highlight that. That's awesome.
I understand that.
All right. So Miss Fromm's class, they tried to get in on StreamYard, sort of didn't work today, but they are on YouTube. So joining us in Sarnia, Ontario. And their question was, what do you like best about your job? You might have just answered this with your biodiversity thing, but is there something that really jumps out to you?
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's so many different things. I mean, in part, one of the things that I love about my job is that it's so varied. I never get bored. We're always answering different questions, going on different adventures. But I would say one of the things that I love the most is working with my students. I'm wondering if I can show you this again.
Yeah. Let's bring it up. There we go.
Is that coming up for you?
Yeah, we've got a beautiful reef right now.
We've got a reef, and we'll see what else. So there's so there's a photo of me and some of my students out on Christmas Island a couple of years ago. We work together as a really close team, whether we're out doing field work or right now it's a little bit of a strange situation because we basically communicate the way that we are right now over these types of video calls. But I love working with students. I love training them and seeing them become capable, independent scientists on their own. And, you know, they're so smart, and I love it. I love working with really smart people who are really curious about the world around them and want to understand how it works and ask lots of questions. And the cool thing about that is that often they think about things that I haven't thought about. And then, you know, we put our minds together, and science is actually a really creative process. So I love that creative nature of it and working together with a team.
Yeah, fantastic. Great shot, guys. And what a beautiful place, too.
Yeah.
So before I'm going to go back to our live classes in a minute. I wanted to share one other question we just got in first. So get ready, Ms. Saunders, and our classes in Vermont, Mr. Crawford Temple. But let's talk a quick segue on what you were just talking about. So there's a big focus on sharing data on your lab website, open science, collaboration. Why do you think that's so important? Why share the information that you've had with other labs around the world?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that. I wasn't expecting that, but yeah, thanks for asking that. So I think in the past, scientists maybe worked more alone and they collected their data, and then they tended to hang on to it really tightly because they felt like, I worked really hard for this, this is mine, I'm not going to share it. But that has really changed. That attitude and idea has really changed in recent years. And one of the reasons that I think it's so important that we share data is because we're facing really big environmental challenges. And if data from one area, or for example, something that we learn about the coral reef that we study can help solve a problem in another area, I want it to. We don't have time to solve every problem from scratch in every area. And so it's really important that we share the information that we have and also the data, because the actual data means that other people can take that data and maybe use it in their studies. Or one of the things that's really important about science is that we continually verify that we've done things correctly. And that's really how science proceeds. We solve problems, and then someone else checks to make sure you haven't made mistakes and checks to see if they can get the same results if they do the same test where they are. And so sharing data allows us to actually just keep checking the science. And to me, the reason that that's so important is because it allows us to make sure that we're all collectively doing the best possible science.
Yeah. Outstanding. Great answer. All right, let's go to Ms. Saunders' class, where the student doesn't have to run in from off screen this time and is already right there. So hi there, guys. Go for it.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Bronte. How are corals made and how do they grow?
That was a good question. Yeah, so corals, maybe are we still?
Yeah, we can bring up your presentation anytime.
Okay, well, let me see what I can bring up here. Okay, so the photo that you're seeing in front of you is a coral reef where I work. And what you can see there are lots of different types of corals. So there's lots of different shapes there, and each of those different kinds of shapes is a different species of coral. So corals are animals, which is kind of a funny thing because they don't move at all. So we usually think about animals as being able to run or swim or fly, and corals can't do any of that. They are sessile organisms, which means they just sit in one place, but they are animals. And they grow by developing this skeleton and building up layer by layer slowly over time. I'm actually going to show you a book that I really love that explains a lot about this. It's called Zoby and the Zoox. It is a beautiful book, and it is all about coral reefs and how they grow and how they work. So one of the really cool things about how coral reefs grow, to answer your question, is that they have very tiny microscopic algae, like little microscopic plants, essentially, that live inside them. And those plants photosynthesize. So they're basically taking energy from the sun and making food with it in a process that's really similar to the way plants, trees around us photosynthesize and get energy and grow. That's what these tiny little microscopic algae do inside corals. And they live in this really close relationship with corals, and called symbiosis, which means it's a positive relationship for both of them. And they share their food that they produce with the corals. And that gives the coral energy and helps the corals to grow.
Fantastic. What a beautiful shot again. And one thing I just linked in the chat bar and on YouTube and Facebook is a video of coral spawning, which is probably the most beautiful thing in all of nature. It's like fireworks underwater. And don't go to the video now because we've still got a bit of broadcast to go. But when we're done, go immediately to that video and check it out. Your mind will be blown, I promise you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, exactly.
Awesome, guys. Let's go back to Vermont. If you guys have a question for us, let's unmute your mic and you're good to go.
All right. Since many of my students are 11th and 12th graders and they're looking ahead to what's next for them, how could they pursue a career in marine biology where they're doing what your students are doing? They're diving, they're firsthand research in the ocean.
Yeah. Probably best to do an undergraduate degree in biology. And, if you have the option to go somewhere on a coast, that's great. But studying anywhere is good. I think there are a lot of internships normally in a normal summer when we're not housebound due to COVID. But normally I know that US universities have a lot of internship programs in the summers that students can get involved with. I actually have a lot of students in my lab in Canada who did their undergraduate degrees at the University of Hawaii. And I know that they have an amazing marine biology program and really good training to become a scientific diver at that university. But there's a lot of universities on both the East Coast and West Coast that have really strong marine biology programs.
It's something that almost every one of our speakers comes to, is this idea of internships or volunteering or following your passion. I mean, honestly, a degree helps a lot, and getting that sort of academic background is huge. But if you just start by working with the people that you'd like to see yourself working with ultimately, it will go a huge way to ending you up in a career that you really like. A quick segue on that is that this year, for the first time ever, we're doing set high school sessions at Exploring by the City of Pants. You can always check out our solely high school programs coming up throughout the month. And we're releasing a cool featurette every single week on Monday, highlighting someone in a cool STEM role with sort of a quick and exciting presentation on what they do. So if you check that out, Mr. Crawford Temple, I encourage you to find that out. Let's go to Ms. Saunders one more time. In a minute, I'm going to take one more question online first, and then we'll go forward to Ms. Saunders and wrap up the broadcast. So, Dr. Baum, so all September long, we've been highlighting marine plastics as an issue. Can you tell us about plastics and coral reefs? Are there any linkages between those, or are plastics affecting coral reef ecosystems?
Yeah, so I mean, in some areas, especially in coral reefs that are near to where people are, plastics can be a big issue. So that's true, for example, in Florida, in the Florida Keys, in Hawaii, in a lot of other reefs around the world where the reef is just offshore from a town or a city. I personally am of the opinion that there are bigger problems on coral reefs, things like overfishing, pollution. So when those cities are right beside a coral reef, it's not just plastic that's getting into the reef, but also a lot of pollution from the cities. And that can be really, really damaging for the coral as well. We also tend to fish coral reefs really hard. So we tend to take more fish from the reef than the reef can produce. So I think there are a lot of different issues on coral reefs and a lot of problems that need solved.
Yeah, which is why some of the solutions that you suggested earlier in the broadcast are so important, things that classes can check out. And again, we've done dozens, if not 100 broadcasts on coral reef ecosystems over the time we've been doing this for 5 years. So you can check out all those on our YouTube channel. Every talk we do gets archived there. So type in coral and find out more amazing stories from amazing researchers like Dr. Baum. Let's go to Ms. Saunders' class for one last live question. So Ms. Saunders' group, come on back in.
Hi, my name is Kristen, and I was wondering, when did you become a scuba diver?
Yeah.
So you're going to make me feel really old. So I became a scuba diver 21 years ago. I will admit that I did not do my training in Canada. And here's a little confession for all of you, which is that I really don't like cold water. So in the last year of my undergraduate degree, I had the huge opportunity to go and study in Panama for 4 months. And I took that opportunity in part to get my scuba diving training when I was there. And that kind of sealed my fate, I guess, because I really only like to dive in the tropics in warm water because I'm a bit of a wimp.
And with bit of a wimp as our last line, I just want to say thank you to everyone on YouTube and joining us live for all the great questions. Before we go, there's another important date to add to your calendar. So I want to make sure I get this all right. So tomorrow, September 23rd, we are celebrating National Science Reading Day. To celebrate, dedicate a period of your day to read about science. Visit your local library, pick up a science book on a topic that interests you or want to know more about. It could be a magazine too, something like National Geographic is a great example. And make sure to write down your reading list or take a picture to participate in Owl Kids contest. There are lots of cool prizes to win, including, I should add, we're going to get to that book in 2 seconds. I'm so excited. With Owl Kids, we are giving away magazine subscriptions to the classes that get the most species in their backyard bio project across September, and take the best picture, which we'll have teachers vote on. So Owl Kids prizes for National Science Reading Day, more Owl Kids prizes for backyard bio. We really hope you guys can check it out. And then Julia, now you're up. Do you have a favorite book or suggestion that you'd like to share with us? You already shared one awesome book, and it looks like you have a second one too.
I have 2 books. Yeah, I have so many books. I have a lot of biodiversity books, so it's hard to choose. But I'll show you this one again because I really love this book. It's just a beautiful children's book. And then since I know we have some high school students in the audience as well, this book is probably more for their level. It's called The Future We Choose: Surviving the Climate Crisis. And what I really love about this book is that it provides climate optimism. It really shows that we have a lot of important decisions to make, but it's up to us, and there is a positive path forward here. And I think that's really important, because I think that sometimes we get a little bit overwhelmed thinking about all of the problems to do with climate change. And this book really lays out a really clear path with 10 actions that all of us can do to help get us where we need to go as a planet in your guys' lifetime.
Amazing. It's so important reading. You can learn pretty much anything you want from a local library. You can go online and find resources there. But if you take a book, you can find solutions that can actually help make the world a better place. So what a fantastic message. Hopefully I can make that screenshot of you with the 2 books, the thumbnail to end the video, so that everyone can see those when they come in. But Dr. Baum, thank you so much today.
Thank you.
This has been great. So if everyone in our classes today can be as passionate about one thing as you are about marine ecosystems and coral reefs, I think we're set going forward for many years to come. So really appreciate it. Make sure to visit scienceliteracy.ca, everyone. So I've put little asterisks beside that. You can find more events like this one, more amazing live broadcasts, both of us exploring by the seat of your pants and beyond. And don't forget, tomorrow, National Science Reading Day. Pick up a book. Share what you read with us with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants on Twitter, with NSERC or Sci-Lit Week on Twitter. We'd love to check out all the amazing finds you have. So I'll bring in Ms. Saunders' class and Mr. Crawford-Stemple's class just to say a quick goodbye to Ms. Saunders' group, Mr. Crawford-Stemple. Thanks so much for joining us, guys.
Thank you.